Hi everyone, today I'm coming to you with some really good news. I have some pretty pictures up. Today, Blinken, the US Secretary of State, announced that Ukraine is free to use US made weapons to strike inside the territory of Russia. And I, I think that's going to be way more effective than what has been happening. So I'm really excited about that. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of Blinken. He talked, I think this is yesterday.
Will provide an additional $2 billion in foreign military financing for Ukraine. And we put this together in a first of its kind defense enterprise fund. And it has three components. One is to provide weapons today, so this will assist Ukraine in acquiring those weapons. Two is to focus as well on something that Dmytro just talked about, investing in Ukraine's defense industrial base, helping to strengthen even more its capacity to produce what it needs for itself, but also to produce for others. And finally, using this fund to help Ukraine purchase military equipment from other countries, not just the United States, for Ukraine.
All right, I got to turn down the sound here. Okay, next, just a word of encouragement from this is something that I recorded. Um, anyway, it's going to be loud, but it's okay, it's great. Sorry, I'm still learning how to do all this.
Tell me what your sign says, Evelyn.
My sign says Ukraine will win the war.
Yes.
And I think Ukraine will win the war because Ukraine never gives up.
That's right.
They always stand back up.
That's right.
That just makes me smile every time I see it. That just gives me so much joy. That was just so much fun. Okay, on November 11th, 2022, when Kherson was liberated, the West was renewing their resolve to provide support. Now Ukraine is sure to liberate more territory. So, as they're doing so, or every time you hear about negotiations or that Ukraine needs to capitulate or to settle, I want to remind you that there are so many people that are still living under occupation. People continue to suffer. Human rights violations is a regular occurrence. People continue to resist. And if we give up, then these people will be stuck in that situation. It's important to recognize that. Anyway, here's a feel good.
Прилітає з Херсона! Дякуємо! 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 Дякуємо!
That just makes me smile. All right, so Ukraine will prevail. There's some things that have changed because the U.S. has really, um, I don't want to say changed because I've always been supportive of Ukraine, but they have intensified their efforts greatly and the language that they're using. So, some of the new exciting developments, I've been really curious about the security guarantees that keep getting discussed. And I want to know if those guarantees are similar or vary depending on the country giving the guarantees. I've wondered about the conditions of those guarantees. And for example, many countries have now said that they would not rule out sending troops to Ukraine. Will they be limited to supportive roles, or is there a potential that Western troops would fulfill combat roles? It's going to be interesting to see, but whatever it takes to win, I think that's what's going to happen. So there was a United Nations Council meeting yesterday, and they discussed some of the following issues. Now, I went through and I watched a lot of it. I would assume that not everyone has the time or the desire to go through all that, so I just kind of summed it up. Um, the first thing is that China is providing weapons to Russia. End of story. The UN is deeply concerned about recent Russian advances in Ukraine, recognition that Russia continues to violate international law and civilians are being targeted by the Russian army. So we know those things, but it's always good that the United Nations will recognize that. I just don't know if there's, it doesn't look like there's going to be any action taken as a result of that. But there are a lot of implications for China providing weapons to Russia. A lot of implications. We'll talk more about that. Um, anyway, this is a good example. The United Nations, they say all these nice stuff. They support Ukraine. They use all the right words, but it's just not effective. And we need less of this, and we need more of this, right? Yeah, way more of this. So just to kind of give you an idea about his role, because personally I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to the politics of other countries. So I, maybe there's a few of you that don't know all the ins and outs of the American government. So this is pretty easy. It's just an explanation that Utah Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, as a senior member of the president's cabinet, this individual is responsible for carrying out the president's foreign policy decisions and advising the president on issues of international concern. The secretary manages international crises and must be ready to respond to the unprecedented anywhere in the world. That's kind of a big job, I think. But anyway, that's why you hear his name a lot, is he is acting in the president's in place of the president. He's directly under the president, and so you will hear a lot about Blinken, as you already have. So this speech by Blinken is 35 minutes long. I'm just going to link it below, and I would encourage you to watch it if you haven't listened to Blinken before. There's a lot of fillers or points of support. There's always certain points that he makes in his speeches, like this is the support that the U.S. has already provided. The U.S. is still supporting Ukraine. Nations are committed to Ukraine. The support has not wavered. Ukraine is incredible, and their military continues to outperform all of the expectations. I'll make a point to say that the U.S. and others truly believe that Ukraine would capitulate when Russia invaded. I don't think the West was all prepared for what was going to happen. I don't think they were prepared to supply weapons. The world just completely underestimated the Ukrainian desire for freedom. Okay, we'll just take a little bit of this from him. It doesn't sound right, but we'll watch a little of this.
People from every region, every community, every institution have stepped forward to serve, including at this university, where students, alumni, teachers, and other employees of Kyiv Polytechnic have answered the call to defend our homeland, putting aside their studies, their careers, their dreams, leaving loved ones behind. 88 of those men and women gave their lives for Ukraine's freedom. Many of their names are etched in a memorial on campus that I just visited with the rector. They include an aspiring book illustrator, a cancer researcher, a marathon runner, a musician who opened Kyiv's first school of rock and roll, a veteran who lost both of his legs fighting against Putin's previous invasion in the Donbass and volunteered to serve again when Putin reinvaded in 2022. Like countless Ukrainians, these citizens never asked others to fight for them. Indeed, all that Ukrainians have asked is that you get what you need to defend yourselves and your right to survive as a nation. Your recent mobilization was a difficult decision, but a necessary one. The defenders who have so courageously held the line for more than 2 years need help. They need rest. This will allow both, while providing your military with additional troops to fight off bigger invading forces. The mobilization will also allow you to harden your defenses, to build more units, to take the fight to Russian aggressors. Now, our joint task is to secure Ukraine's sustained and permanent strategic advantage, so that Ukraine can not only deliver on the battlefield today, but deter and defend against future attacks. As President Biden said, we want Ukraine to win, and we're committed to helping you do it. In the immediate term, the United States and dozens of other countries will get Ukraine the assistance that you need, and will get it to you quickly. We're going to help you hold off Russia's attacks, make it harder for them to strike you, and keep the Black Sea open so you can keep growing your economy and keep helping to feed the world. We know that time is of the essence. That's why, just 1 minute after Congress approved our massive aid package, President Biden sent ammunition, armored vehicles, missiles, and air defenses.
All right, I won't make you watch. We'll get to some of that a little bit later. It's pretty long. So those are great words. But they're a plan. It's fabulous that we're all so fabulous. The West is fabulous. We support Ukraine. Ukraine is outperforming. They are fabulous. What's the plan here? So, if you can recall the first year of war, then you know that Russia was experiencing a disadvantage due to Ukrainian drones. And China was not condemning the war, but they weren't showing open support to Russia. And this has changed now. So, adjusting to that new reality requires a major paradigm shift that I believe Western leaders are beginning to realize. China is supplying weapons to Ukraine. China is the leading country in drone technology and production. Now the Russian military is equipped with sophisticated technology, which they lacked prior to the assistance from China. Ukraine is not just fighting the Russian military, but a military that has advanced capabilities that often surpass Western technology. Just as Russia adjusted their weapons and tactics, the West is in the process of doing the same. It wasn't exactly that the West was lagging behind, but that drones development was not a primary focus. I want you to consider this carefully and fully appreciate the situation. So, Ukraine has major shortages of equipment, manpower, and financial resources. And now, and also they don't have the manpower. They're really short on manpower, but they're fighting a country with superior numbers. And now that country also has weapons from Iran, North Korea, and China. So that's pretty scary. That makes it really hard to succeed. Um, Blinken talked about three goals. The first, you can go back and watch it. I'm not going to get into all of that. The first goal is military. Ukraine will be supplied with what it needs. 32 countries, all of NATO, have given security guarantees for the next 10 years to prevent an attack by Russia or other countries that are guaranteed for the next 10 years. Typo. During this period, there will be a buildup of weapon capability in Ukraine. Deter and defend with future weapon systems. Produce weapons in Ukraine, including air defense systems. Ukraine will not have met all the requirements. Ukraine doesn't have to meet all of the requirements before joining NATO, and all 32 countries have agreed to that, which I think is pretty spectacular, because they'll work on those things. It's not that they won't meet NATO standards, but I think that they'll be allowed to apply for NATO, and they will get the same guarantees as if they were in NATO as they work on getting all of those goals met. Well, let's see, missed one. Okay, economic. Weapons and other military needs to be produced in Ukraine. Blinken said is encouraging businesses to invest in Ukraine, continued partnership with the EU so that the EU standards are being applied in Ukraine, anticipating that the Ukraine will join the EU, ensure that the Black Sea remains open. Also, he mentioned that Ukraine's GDP has been growing despite there being a war. And I love this. Blinken said with all of the sanctions that are being imposed on Russia, it opens up a market. Like Ukraine could just walk into that market that, Russia is not able to fulfill right now. So I just thought that would be hilarious. I think that's a great idea. Okay, third goal, increase democracy. Now, when I think of polls, I'm really, really critical. Blinken said that 8 out of 10 Ukrainians still believe that there are different rules for civilians and police officers, meaning that if you're a police officer, then you can take bribes or, there's a level of corruption there. Now, this 8 out of 10 Ukrainians, I don't know how accurate that is, but to say 8 out of 10, that is clearly a majority of people that they spoke to. So corruption is still occurring, and a goal is to take care of that. Um, People don't trust the government, and that's a deterrent in serving in the military. Access to weapons, equipment, and supplies should be consistent throughout the military rather than the current situation where many units aren't being supplied with what they need. And we've seen that over and over again, right? There's units that have a lot of stuff and equipment, and there's other units that barely have anything. And then Ukraine will have some oversight as they meet continue working so that they can meet the UN standards. And anyway, I'll link everything below. I appreciate if you would like the video, subscribe, and share. Thank you.